Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How's it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to episode 54 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. We're nearing the finish line and I'm feeling positive. There's so many things that are not great, but guess what is okay? This project, I think it's gonna have a happy ending. But before we get to the ending, we must of course talk about my good friends over at Third Eye Comics. Third Eye Comics, your headquarters, your home, your haven for everything comics, graphic novels, gaming, TV, movies, music, pop culture, candy, good customer service. Your haven for good customer service. They are really nice over there. So if you'd like to purchase something for yourself, please do so. You can reach them over at shop.thirdeyecomics.com. That's shop.thirdeyecomics.com. Support them because they have supported this ridiculous project. Now let's talk about today's movie. Well, my friends, I have a special guest today. I have a special podcast for you today. So there was a movie that came out that got a lot of buzz when it came out on Netflix called Hot Frosty. And I had a friend who was like, hey, if you watch this movie, I want to be on the podcast to talk about it. And I said, you know what? I'll watch the movie. And sure enough, I did. And that's what we're talking about today. It's my friend Dave Roman and I talking about the movie Hot Frosty. Enjoy. All right, Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for joining me. You wanted to talk about Hot Frosty.
Well, I would have talked about any Christmas movie, but
okay, well, this is the one.
I feel like Hot Frosty is the one that the people are talking about. So
that's true. I would not have watched this otherwise. I tend not to watch the glitzy, glamorous Netflix movies because they're too good for me. They're too boring.
Yeah, this one has a budget.
This one did, in fact, have a budget, and it had a real cast.
Right.
It had actors from Things that were in this movie.
Every Christmas movie has people from Things. It's just that it has people that are still in Things.
Yes, you're right. I mean,
current Things.
The entire police
most
force.
Most of these movies are it's like people who had their heyday like 10 years ago or maybe more.
Yeah, or they were Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Right.
And she is just in a disproportionate amount of these movies.
Right. The biggest stars are like 90s sitcom people or like drama, WB or whatever it is.
Well, there's also a good number of what I feel like, maybe it's just because what I'm saying, like a lot of teen stars or close to teen stars.
Yeah.
Like I watched one this season with two of the cast members of High School Musical, but It wasn't the two of the primary cast members of High School Musical. It was like tertiary, secondary characters.
Right.
And I thought that was a cute gimmick for that movie, even though it did not move me much. That they were not in the movie. Anyway, let's talk about Hot Frosty. It's a weird movie. I'll tell you that. It's I don't know what they're going with for this.
Yeah, I think what rubbed me the wrong way almost out the gate is that I felt like they knew it was a weird movie too. And I feel like you probably agree with me that like some of the best ones of these are the really sincere ones where there's no irony whatsoever. Whereas I feel like they knew, like going in, they're like, we're making a weird Christmas movie that's trying to kind of.
They wanted to be very quirky. Those are the ones that I find the most dislikable. Are the ones that try to be quirky, or try to be like knowingly corny, and it's like we're gonna make you laugh with a wink and a nod, and it just makes me angry. Like you're not that funny.
Which this movie didn't have too much winking and nodding.
No.
So we'll give it that.
We'll give it that. So now the movie starts out with a narrator telling us about other fairy tales about snowmen. And I thought, and that was the other thing, movies love some narrators. When they want to act like they're high-minded, they want to talk about, like, we're going to really lay down some lore. Let's talk about the lore of snowmen.
Right.
And then
Which
we get
right
our
off the
main.
bat, were you calling BS on it? Because I was
I
like,
was just like, come on, just start the movie already.
because they were like for a very specific like I was like, is that what it is? Like is it snowmen only come to life for very specific people? I guess so. I don't
I
know.
mean, well, yeah. I mean, it's not happening for everybody, so otherwise it would have to be from specific people. But
Yeah, but
whether
I guess
they're
the
special
original
or not,
Frosty, like when I think in the original Frosty, at least in the song, it's like he comes to life for the children, kind of
yes,
plural. I guess in the Rankin Bass special, there's that one girl who kind of becomes like his best friend.
of
But
course,
I never got the sense that he came to life just for her. It's just that she was the only one who had like time on her hands to help Frosty. Like all the other kids, are like we got school, we got stuff to do, we got our parents, and this one girl's like, no, I'm gonna help Frosty out.
before we even get to Frosty, we haven't earned him yet. We have to get through our main character Kathy
Right.
waking up in just a decrepit home, just
Yeah.
a home that's falling apart. Now, what I
This is the best
got
part of the movie for me, actually. Like,
really okay. Well, I want to know why,
that
but I
was
put
the
a
highlight.
she wakes up, she's coated in blankets. She looks like I don't know what she's from. She's a rag person, just
Yeah.
covered in layers and layers.
Yeah.
And
It's adorable.
we take her through her home where there's just a whole bunch of issues going on. There's no heat, there's a leak, there's a hole in one of her steps. Who knows what isn't featured in the motion picture? But why was this your favorite part of the movie?
I'll just say real quick, very easy to skip past. I didn't notice that stuff. So I watched this movie twice. The first time I didn't notice the setup of the house being needing all the
Yes,
repairs and stuff.
it was
I
in
did see the post. I remember the post-it note that said, call the repairman.
Call the
I
Heating
didn't
Guy.
realize that
Yeah,
they were visually setting up that like her house was falling apart, top to bottom. Um, I just thought it was a really nice setup of like, here's a woman who like she's got to go to work, she's got stuff to do, so
yeah.
she's not completely incompetent, but at the same time, she's like a little Eskimo person. Like she's burying herself under blankets. She's like
Yes,
basically living in a pillow fort.
she is doing that.
She's got no heat, so she's getting dressed like with her clothes. Like she puts the blanket on and then
Yeah.
gets dressed underneath the blanket. And I thought that just set her up in a very compassionate way that made you kind of feel for her. And I don't know, I just found that a very adorable, like
Here's
just
my
visually.
concern. In multiple rooms, she has heating fans
Mm,
that appear to be on all the time.
dangerous.
Because there was one part when she came home for the day and it was still on in the living room. And I thought, well, yeah, I'd want it to be warm when I got home too. But
Right.
that's so dangerous.
Yeah, a fireman Christmas would not approve of this.
No, well, no, not a fireman Christmas. So just dog shit. We can't. No, don't bring that into this house. That fireman Christmas. So she does this, and she's all doing this to get to work.
Right.
And that she works at a place called Kathy's Cafe. That's cafe with the K because she knows what's up. She knows branding. And when she walks in, she's heating herself. She's not even warm yet. Her car still didn't get her warm. Her car did not do the trick because she's heating herself on the stovetop within the cafe. And all the guy that she works with, the guy that maybe even works for her, is like,
The
still don't have that
sensible one.
heating fixed.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I don't have the heating fixed. I'll call someone tomorrow. And the thing is, it doesn't seem like money is a great issue for her, at least as far as home repair goes. It never comes up that money's that tight for that.
Yeah, this movie plays it a little fast and loose. Like I do feel like sometimes she's like, spoiler, there's a scene where she's like scrambling for cash and she's not able to come up with the cash. But
Yes.
but you're right that like it does sort of beg the question of like they never really establish like is this business not doing well? Is she not able to support it? Like yeah, there's a lot of loose, rough around the edges
It's
stuff
hard to
about
tell
that.
whether the movie forgets to include things or if we're so
Mhm.
used to these tropes being in other movies that we're like, well,
Yes.
you didn't talk about if the business is doing well. Why aren't you
Right.
talking about the business quality?
Right.
We get a lot of scenes of her being nice to customers, and then she
Yep.
goes across the street to the only other business that we visit throughout this whole movie, and that'd be Mel and Theo's reclaimed rags,
Oh, wait,
where her
can I just say
buddies
real
work.
quick before we
Yeah,
forget because we glossed over this one point? Important setups, two important setups in the beginning of the movie. One, as she's leaving the house, she's got the record player playing. So she's playing like music on an old LP player.
I
And
had not
next to it,
noticed that.
yeah, the music is playing this so the soundtrack, but it's like it's supposed to be like, oh, she's listening to this old Christmas song. And then there's a photo next to the record player of her and her we eventually learn husband who
Sure.
rest in peace, but it's a black and white photo. And
I
it
hadn't
looked,
noticed that at
yeah, it's a
all.
black and white photo, and it looks so old timey that like immediately I thought it was like, oh, are those supposed to be her parents? Is
Or
this
she's a
supposed?
ghost.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah.
I hadn't noticed that. No, you missed the rampant disrepair, and I
Yeah.
missed the gramophone and photograph.
And then the other thing she passes very specifically, and I was like, good filmmaking choice. They really make sure you notice the ATM machine on the way to the,
Oh, that's right, because it
it
is
will
sticking
come into
outside
play
of her
later.
cafe, right? Of course. She also takes note of all the people working on the ice sculpting contest.
Yes.
There was a point she walks through, so it's like
Mhm.
these two, it's like a main street where there's businesses on either side of the street, but then there's a big landmass in the middle, which is where all the activities take place, such as this ice sculpting. So she walks from one business to the other. She walks through it. She comments. She tells random people, "You're doing a good job," and
Yeah.
they're thanking her because she's so kind to everybody.
And typically of similar to so many of these movies, like they make a big deal. Like there's like a sign that's like, this town is known for their snowman
It is
competition.
known for this. You're right. That's on the sign for
Yeah.
the city.
Yeah. That's a
So
big
she
deal.
gets to her buddy's place, and then they're just a couple of kooky cats who have this business going. And after some wacky, oh, she gives them turkey sandwiches. That's right. One with no mayo, one with lots of mayo. That's what my notes tell me here, and that's very important that I wrote that down. I took time out of my finite
I'm glad
existence.
you put that down because in my head I was like, they really emphasize this little girl wanting chocolate chip pancakes, and that's only on Sundays. But she makes an
Only on
exception.
Sunday.
She makes an exception, and that's like I know you've pointed out in other movies that like they always establish that she's a like these women are good people,
Yes,
a kind gesture like helping a hobo or something. And in this
there
case,
always has to be something there.
yeah, this case it's like she broke the rules for this little girl.
For chocolate chip what are we doing that's only on Sundays?
Yeah,
How much is that holding up the cooking where
yeah,
you're like, no,
yeah.
we can't disrupt the process for regular pancakes.
Yeah, there's a
It's
chocolate chip
Sundays only.
shortage. There's a chip shortage that,
Well, you never know. In Hope Springs, who knows what's going on?
yeah.
So the woman, once she's talking to her buddies, all of a sudden it turns to them being worried about her being alone. Now, I don't remember exactly how long her husband has been dead, but
Okay.
they immediately, the woman, Mel, starts piling on about how you should be with someone. You need to, as she puts it, good things happen when you go out into the cold. And I'm like, she lives in the cold. That's not good. But I
Right.
understand the metaphor here, Mel. I get what you're going for. And then she says a scarf came into their place, I guess, to be resold. And she's like, no, no, no. There's something special about this scarf. I have to give it to Kathy.
Yeah, which immediately she undoes her karma points. Like so the good karma of helping the girl with the pancakes is
Yeah.
undone by regifting almost immediately.
So yeah, so fast forward, the rest of the day is just her helping customers, and then at night she's leaving her business and she's looking at the ice sculptures, and there's snowman this, there's snowman that, and then amongst sandwich between two snowmen
No,
is
wait, you said
just
that was normal snowmen,
yeah,
right?
normal
Like what
traditional
they,
three globe snowman.
right.
And then between them is the most erotic snowman carving that you've ever seen. And the thing I put in my
Arguably
note,
inappropriate. Arguably
well, it's who is this for? Because it
uh
looks like it's straight off of a romance novel, except it's made out of snow.
right. And more importantly, and never answered in the movie, who made this?
That's a great question. Holy crap. That would have been such a funny thing to add at the end where the person who carved it, who
Yeah,
sculpted it,
daddy.
shows up. That was mine.
Yeah.
I should have won the contest.
Yeah, where's his daddy?
But the thing was, they put nipples on the snowman.
Yeah, like Joel Schumacher designed it.
It was crazy. It was exactly like, I mean, who knows what the back was like? Why would they make it with no shirt? That's the other thing. It's a shirtless snowman. He's all six pack and all nipples, and that's everything he's wearing. And she sees the two snowmen wearing their scarves, and suddenly she feels empathy for this man made of snow who looks like a regular man who doesn't have a scarf. And she gives it the scarf that her friend gave her in good fortune. It's like, please take this scarf,
Now,
better your life.
now the way you describe it reads as if like you I like to use empathy because I didn't read it that way. Like I read it as like she was trying to get rid of that scarf the minute it was handed to her. And
I
this is
choose to
like
believe your way, though.
this is like she was just like, oh my God, this scarf. I can't believe these. Ugh.
I
And
mean, it
then she
looked
was
like a
just like,
pretty nice scarf, I'll be honest. It was pretty
it
thick and
did.
luscious.
But she didn't seem happy to receive it when she got it.
No, maybe she thought it was pitiful. Like she thought it was literally pity being thrown upon her, and
Mhm.
she did not want that in her life. So she puts it on the thing, and as soon as she walks away, magic occurs. And I don't remember if that's what's in this movie, but I have noticed a hallmark of magic being used in movies. And the signpost that it's magical is when you hear chimes.
Mm.
And I'm almost certain that's what would have happened in this movie. We would have heard chimes, and
The wind
then
blows. Yeah.
then there's a man born from snow, and he's completely naked, which tells you what we see naked waist down as a snowman too.
Well, that's what's interesting is I didn't notice this the first time when I watched it the second time. They do that like Austin Powers film trick where they always have something conveniently covering what would be the anatomical,
Yes.
thing. Because it's like he was naked as a snowman too, and if he has nipples, it's a safe assumption that he also has a penis.
And if he doesn't have, let's just put it out there, snow genitalia,
Right?
then what does he have when he's born as a man?
Right.
Is he just a Ken doll down there?
I assume not because
Well, we know not.
no, actually no,
because
not. Yeah, we know not because later someone describes it. So
yeah, so like he becomes a human being, completely naked, sans scarf, well, except for the scarf he has on, and an older couple's walking their dog. It's very late at night, and they see him, and the woman is acting like she's never seen such a naked, handsome man before, and in further jokes throughout the movie, when they describe her interaction with him, they act like her description of him was unusable because all she was focused was something that wouldn't be identifiable.
which is
Hence,
fun. Which I'll get.
which it was pretty good.
Yeah, there's a few good jokes in this movie, and that was one of them.
They tried, and so now he's a living being and he's wandering around, and this is when it starts bothering me, the magic of this movie.
Mm.
And it's not just this movie. I watched another movie about another snow sculpture came to life
Oh,
just about a week ago. It was called Enchanted Christmas. It's fine. And in this one, there's a dad that carves a woman for his little girl because he's a snow ice sculptor, and that's what she asked for Christmas. And the whole point is, though, she wishes for it to be real, to be her dad's girlfriend. And when it comes to life, she knows almost nothing about life, but she learns very quickly.
Sure.
Well, in this case, one of the first things this guy says is he wants clothes. Well, how does he know what clothes are?
right.
Is he born from whole cloth? Does he know things? But then when he goes to Kathy's house, spoiler, he goes to Kathy's house eventually. He doesn't know how the remote control works. He doesn't really, but he's okay watching TV. What does he know? What doesn't he know? And
Yeah.
that's where they start playing fast and loose with this sort of creation. And then
Yeah.
I get angry.
Which these,
Because-
yeah, I was gonna say that is consistent in almost every single version of these like fish out of water movies. They always play fast and loose with what they don't know or what they do know, and it's
It's
if you
whatever's
get too
convenient
far
for the
into that, it'll drive you crazy. Like I do turn my brain a little bit off during that stuff because it's like you can't get that'll just stop you dead right there.
It's not fair to the movie. The movie did not ask me to watch it, but I cannot help but get annoyed because when I notice like oddities, like he understood this, but then he doesn't know this.
Yeah,
No,
he does jump to the clothes pretty quickly.
So he goes over to Mel and Theo's ragtime store.
Wait, can
and
we
he
just weigh in real quick? Because
Yeah.
the movie's called Hot Frosty.
Yeah. I
Very-
think he has an incredible body, like no doubt about it. Just it's a very well kept and well in shape.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was a little confused because I was like, is he typically handsome? Like I don't know, like
No, that's the thing. Like
he's a little
like,
weird. Like you mentioned the word weird. Like he is a little weird, which
he's more interesting looking than
yeah, which
traditionally
is
handsome.
like, kind of like ultimately. But at first I was like, is this someone's like ideal? Like I mean, he does have like an Adonis bod for sure.
Yes,
But there's also something a little like goofy about
but he
him.
has a very charismatic yet almost comical series of facial expressions,
Mhm.
which works for like the comedy element of his character, but it does take away from the guy everybody sees and immediately thinks is the most handsome thing they've ever seen,
Right.
because that doesn't really seem to fit. But I mean, Hot Frosty, sure. I mean, I guess as far as comparing him to other snowmen, then yeah, he's the hottest one going.
Compared to Michael Keaton and Jack Frost.
Well, that's true. Yeah, he's a handsome boy, and but we'll give it to Hot Frosty just because recency bias, maybe. So he accidentally crashes through the front window of Mel and Theo's store, and he steals clothes from there, which becomes an almost shockingly important
I know.
element of this story.
I was going to say the unsufferably important part of the story.
Because once he takes a jumpsuit with the name Jack on it, that becomes his name later on in the movie, and he also takes some boots, and this becomes the entire plot of the movie. This one accidental crime,
Yep.
and it's astonishing. But let's move. So the next day, how does he meet up with Kathy again? Let's see here. So she sees him walking about, and I guess the next morning, we see her go through her ritual. And when she gets to work, she finds him, and somehow
And he recognizes her immediately. That's all it was. Like he immediately realizes that like she's the one who brought him to life.
And he says to her, "I was made of snow, and now I'm made of not snow."
Right.
He understands his own birth. He has the concept here. So she's confused, and she's then concerned.
He's talking to the other snowman. That's what it is. He's talking to the other snowman.
That's right. He's telling them this could happen to them.
Yeah, which is cute.
It is cute, but imagine what they would look like in human form.
Right. But that's my problem with it is that like they're regular snowmen. Like
yeah. So she takes him into the diner. Let's see here. He starts consuming everything he can, like ketchup packets and jelly packets, whatever's right in front of him. This concerns the diner's cook, but Kathy insists that he seems harmless. Then we cut to Mel and Theo's store. The police have arrived, and this is when I was surprised. This was my big shock of the movie, that the police, the sheriff, and the deputy are played by Craig Robinson and Joe Trulio.
Right.
And I did not expect comedic actors of some renown to play such relatively large bit parts in this movie, when everybody else is about the level of, oh yeah, I understand why they're in this. This is a fine movie for them to be in. But then I saw them and I'm like, really? They really wanted to beef up this one set of characters.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just surprising.
And it feels like the deal was, and we'll let you do whatever you want.
Whatever you want. Whatever you want. I mean, even the credits just feature a long extended scene with them goofing around.
Right.
And then I started, in my notes I wrote, because they are so wacky in their scenes, just so over the top comedic that doesn't really match the rest of the movie. I got worried in my notes that this movie would be too wacky to take notes about, because there has to be a certain level of coherence for me to be right about it, because I'm trying to convey something to people. And I got worried. I said, oh, no. But it turns out they were only a small part of the movie. So it was okay for the most part.
Yeah, but I understand your concern, because I think that's one of the things I struggled with the movie. And the first time I watched it, it annoyed me more. The second time I gave it a little more grace, is that because they are, like you said, playing it wacky, they're so over the top. And the shtick is like, it's a small town where nothing happens. It's a really quiet, there's no crime, but this police officer takes his job super seriously, specifically the Craig Robinson character, and no one cares about the crime, which is kind of a frustrating thing from the audience standpoint, because it's like, you're basically saying this is not important, and yet you're filling up a lot of the movie talking about it and having this one cop like obsessed with it. So it can kind of go two ways depending on how you feel about Craig Robinson. Like you can either say, oh, it's very funny, this guy's ridiculous, or it can just frustrate you because this guy is obsessed with something that nobody cares about, including the audience.
So, yeah, that's the thing about his performance in Brawls. I really like him in general. I found him almost unwatchable in this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because his tone is so different than the movie, or because he really had no reality to his character. He's constantly above, over the top. He's constantly saying things that you don't believe he would say, but that doesn't fit with the rest of the movie, with people who are trying to be emotionally honest at times. Yeah. And it's not until the end of the movie.
The movie wants it both ways. And what I will give them credit is like they create in-universe explanations for why he is the way he is. I mean, they don't go into like his mental health or anything,
but they give a line or two.
But there's a line or two to be like, oh, he blows everything out of proportion. He's living in his own world. Like
he's worried about getting reelected, and he doesn't want the crime
to try to sort of like justify why he thinks he's like Clint Eastwood, in this small town thing. I think my double issue, this is probably not going to bother anybody else, but this character is almost lifted verbatim from a show called Resident Alien with Alan Tudyk.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, the setup of that show is that there's an alien who's in a very small town, and it's a winter town, by the way, too. And he's like this over the top cop who's like, trying to solve, the crime or whatever, but nobody wants him to solve the crime because everybody, the main character who is the biggest suspect is like the main character and everybody loves him and it's, he's fun, right? So it's the same kind of thing where it's like you have this over the top cop who's like, I'm going to get this guy and everything's serious, but like nobody likes this character because it's like, dude, stop. Like,
Well, yeah, not to belabor, but it does feel like they couldn't come up with a antagonist or even like
yeah,
an event to get past for this character for the movie, and so they just kind of created one, and they just kept shoehorning him in. Like he has to have something to work past.
yeah,
Whereas in most movies of this type, they usually make the relationship something that has to be worked past. Like
right.
there's a misunderstanding in the main relationship, and they have to get around that to get back together.
Yeah,
And in this case, the relationship is fine throughout. So they have to. There's an external hurdle they apply here, which is Craig Robinson and the other guy looking for the people who broke into this one store one time at the beginning of the movie, and
right. But
they
even
keep
that's like
appearing.
it's such a strange because you're right. Like usually the stakes are pretty low in these movies to begin with. So
Yeah.
it's like weird that they would almost kind of give this movie stakes because there's a cop who's on his tail, but then they soften it so much that it's like I don't know. I feel like you could remove that entire character
Oh, easily.
and everything kind of still works.
Everything works, and it would also be a more pleasant experience because one of the tenets of the main character, Hot Frosty, is that, or Jack as he's called in the movie, is that everybody likes him.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a genuine person. Everybody comes around to liking him. And so you take away that dissonance, you take away the person trying to do harm to him, even if it's just putting him away for a crime he committed, then you have to figure out where is this tension going to come from otherwise. And I think it would make more sense to come from the plot itself instead of this other thing happening. Anyway, let's
Right.
keep going. Um, so Kathy is now worried about this guy because he behaves as if he's suffered some sort of brain trauma or he doesn't know where he's at. We don't know. But then she recognizes the scarf around his neck as the one that she gave away the night before. She compares it to a photo that she took of the snowman and realizes he might be the snowman, which is weird. She takes his temperature. He's really cold instead of feeling like he's hot because he's sweating. Because anywhere he's in that has normal room temperature causes him to, in his version of things, melt. But he can't be in a snowman melting, so he's a man that's sweating. Let's see here. There's a whole scene with the police officers. I'm not even going to worry about it. And then we cut to her taking Hot Frosty Jack to a friend's doctor's who's a doctor. I forget what she does officially,
Yeah.
but that's her role here. Like
Someone should check her certification.
she is very unprofessional. So they take his temperature; it's below 30 degrees, and she's like, "Well, that's unusual." And Kathy blurts out that maybe he's melting, and the doctor gets a look on her face. So Kathy comes clean with her suspicion that Jack might be a snowman who is brought to life. She shows the photo to the doctor friend, and the doctor says, while I know magic and the like is not scientifically possible, this could be the simplest explanation
Right.
that he's a snowman. Of course it would be.
Throughout my entire life and
Like
career.
if it was an episode of House or something, and they were like, well, why does this man freeze to the touch, but he's also sweating? Well, the simplest explanation is he's a snowman brought to life. There is no medical explanation that we know of.
Yeah.
The doctor offers to let Jack stay with her in an allusion to his attractiveness, and she'd be happy to keep him around.
Yeah.
But he wants to stay with Kathy because he says he loves Kathy, and she's the one who brought him to life, which feels a bit like a power imbalance in this relationship because and we don't know that he thinks he must love Kathy, but he does keep saying he loves Kathy to the point that eventually she has to tell him to stop saying that because
Right,
the
which I
words
think
mean
is
too much to her.
that's kind of like there's almost something there. Like they're skirting around something that could have been interesting in a different movie, but I feel like they don't fully develop it. But it felt like there's like what they were going for was this idea that like he's so innocent that he just like he loves
He says
unconditionally.
what yes, exactly. He
Just
says what he
like
feels.
whereas she should be in theory more filtered,
She's
restrained.
she's burdened by
She's
her
protecting
life.
herself.
Yeah.
She's waiting for, for something that may never happen or something, but they don't fully develop that. And it's a little strange that that's kind of like what seems to be their dynamic, is that he keeps trying to say like I love you, and she's like, whoa, slow down, dude, like don't say things you don't mean, and like be careful about wording and stuff like
As she
that.
puts it, to say you love a person, you have to say it when you mean it, and it's something that takes a
Yeah.
long time to realize,
Yeah.
but not in this movie apparently, because she is a hypocrite because she will soon be saying it to him.
Right,
Uh,
which of course we want that to happen because that's
oh, I don't have a problem
romance.
with it,
Yeah.
but I'm not the one that set that rule. I'm not the one
Yeah.
that said it has to take a long time. That
Right.
was her. So when she gets home, one of the things we learn about Hot Frosty, aka Jack, is that she has him watching TV, and he watches TV all night.
Yeah, which is
And
another classic trope of these kinds of movies, right? Like,
yeah, and that's where they ingest so much about the world around them. And there's a montage here of quote unquote comedy clips where he watches things and then reacts to them in real life as if he thinks it's real. Like he watches a Dracula movie and then hides behind the couch, but
right.
then also somehow knows to make a crucifix out of like a candle holder. And you're like, well, how did that happen? How does he know to do that? We'll never find out. At some point, he does go downstairs, and I think I'm jumping ahead a bit, but he goes downstairs because he says he wanted to look for something to kill or fight a vampire,
Right.
and then he finds the photo of her and her husband who has passed on.
Yeah, this is where suddenly the movie gets serious, right?
Oh, very serious.
Really serious all of a sudden. Like they didn't just like, have her husband die. He died of cancer, and it's
It was a very serious. I mean,
yeah,
that's what happens if a person his age passes away. It tends to be of something
sure.
that is kind of sudden or very stark. Um, let's see here. So there's a whole bit where she goes to work the next day, and the police come over to warn her about the man who was streaking the night before and possibly broke into Mel and Theo's business. It's, as I put in my notes, it is very silly. This is when we get the montage of Jack watching TV,
Oh, which
and
by
then
the way,
she,
there was a good yeah, I don't know if you already have a note about this. Like I feel like one of the best jokes in this movie is the meta joke about what's on TV at one point.
oh, what's that?
They have another Netflix Christmas movie
Oh,
playing,
yes, that's
and
right,
it's
with Lindsay
and it's the
Lohan.
one with Lindsay Lohan, and Lacey Chabert sees her and goes, "Oh, I feel like I went to high school with her," which is a
Yes,
nod
I.
to the fact they're both in Mean Girls.
This is not the first time I've watched a Netflix movie that features another Netflix movie inside of the Netflix movie,
Yeah,
and
which
I
that's
think that.
yeah, I've seen that, but this was like an extra level because they're also
Oh, of
referencing
course.
Mean Girls outside of the Netflix.
Oh yeah, no, that was clever, but I also think it just shows the propensity for Netflix to always kind of
Oh
pack
yeah,
in the other media that they can, which I appreciate. I mean, you're smart, you own it, so go for it. Um,
yeah, because she also and at the doctor's office she says like, "Oh yeah, and I'm the Queen of Aldovia" or something like that, where it's like another reference to another
yeah, I
Christmas
guess that
movie.
would probably be one of the listeners asked me or recommended the Princess Switch movies this year,
Oh, is
and
that
so
where she's from? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I forgot if it was
I
from. I like the Christmas Switch movies.
that one, at least the first one, featured the Kingdom of Belgravia,
Okay, yeah, I was
and
gonna
that's
say
the
they're
only one
all.
I've
I
watched.
think Aldovia is a different one. It's a Christmas Prince. The thing is, these titles get so confusing. Like they're all so similar. I watched two movies called A Scottish Christmas.
I saw one of those. I did not watch it. I ended up watching another movie that just happened to take place in Scotland, and so I thought I'd fill my Scottish Christmas
Yeah,
list for
there's
the
there's
year.
one with Lacey Chabert and one without. So that's all you need to know.
Oh, well, that is all I need to know. So it's him watching stuff, and that's when he finds the paperwork surrounding the husband's death and says aloud, "What's cancer?" And it's
Right.
like, "Phew, what are we doing here?"
Mommy,
And
what's cancer?
she explains it's a bad thing that happens to people, which is sure enough.
Fair.
Um, because he's watched TV, we learn that he has an ability to just immediately learn whatever he sees. He's just the kind of learner that can just pick up something by seeing it once.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is the case here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he carries it through, spoiler, when he becomes a human. Like,
I don't think it does.
I,
Can we also just take a moment to like veer off to the side here and say the elephant in the room for me in this is that nothing about this movie is as wacky and or as like what am I watching here compared to a very nutty Christmas with Melissa Joan Hart where the
oh, I haven't
Nutcracker
watched it. That's the one. That's the one with the Nutcracker. I
that's
haven't
when the
watched that one.
Nutcracker comes to life. You haven't seen that one?
No, that's one I have not seen.
Oh, that's like this, but better, much better, because it is more sincere and more ridiculous. So in that one, they do the same exact thing. He watches TV, blah, blah, blah. But like, and the way he helps is he uses his nutcracker skills, which
Of what? Cracking a
cracking
joystick?
nuts. Yeah, cracking nuts. Yeah, it's bananas. And there's a great, like, sped up, wow, look at him eating those nuts. Look at him cracking those nuts. I was
Oh, that
waiting
makes
for
me want to
Frosty to
watch
do
it.
something. That's the thing. Like Frosty, like he ends up being helpful, but nothing related to like his snow power or like him
Yeah, or
being like
being
this.
made from, there's nothing about
Yeah,
being made from snow that makes him
no.
powerful or helpful. No, he just learns things. So, for example, when she comes home from work, he has made her a pizza in the oven, which he somehow was able to finagle, even though it would be very painful for him, or at least debilitating. He still made her pizza. And then we learned he's made two pizzas. He made one for himself and then put it in the fridge so it would cool down because he knows that the fridge cools things down somehow. And he made these pizzas, and so it's just
And eggnog, of course, because it's
he,
Christmas.
yeah, of course. Well, yeah.
Got you got
Otherwise,
to get something. You got to get a little bit of something, something in that.
this is something I've noticed in so many of these movies. If you take out just the elements of well, for example, eggnog,
Yes.
and at one point, don't they exchange gifts towards the end? But this isn't a Christmas movie. It's just a movie that happens to take place during Christmas. And I don't mean that like is Die Hard a Christmas movie. I mean they market it as a Christmas movie, but it's barely a Christmas movie. It's more of a, if anything, just a winter movie.
Yeah, so many of them are generally.
And it just so happens. So yeah, the eggnog is like we have to include something that's Christmassy
Yeah,
about this.
which that's my
Yeah,
favorite. That's like of all these Hallmark movies, like it's like the drinking game or the just the.
yeah.
I would love to see someone like do like a sizzle reel of like all the clips of people just being like hot chocolate, oh gin,
Oh
like
my God.
people like enthusiastic about gingerbread cookies as if they're good. Like people are just like, oh, gingerbread cookie. Like the way they ham fist in those like Christmas elements. It's like,
Yeah.
ooh, candy canes. Like no one, I've never seen a person in my life get excited about a candy cane. But in
I
all of
hot
these
chocolate is
movies,
such a huge one.
yeah, which at least that one people like, but
They do like
way
it, but it's
but they
plants
always like
every
will
hot
stop the
beverage.
plot. Like it's always just like, they'll force it in and they always act like it's like no one's ever like, oh, this is like grandma's special recipe of hot chocolate. And
Of
you're just like,
course.
ooh, like wow, wow, that's so good. Oh my
It's
God.
it's not just powder and water. This is a
Yeah. No,
special
this
hot
is
chocolate.
like
Oh, this is my grandmother's eggnog recipe. It's always something that harkens to their history.
right.
Um,
All right.
so
Sorry, that
then
was a side note.
no, that's fine. So I guess it's another day when he's by himself. Oh no, this is after she goes to bed. That's right. Because he starts watching TV. He also wants to go to Hawaii because he sees a thing about Hawaii on TV and he wants to go there with her.
Right.
Immediately he's like, I want to go there with you. And she says, you can't because it's going to be very warm. And he understands all of that. That's fine. And then she goes to bed.
Actually, it's not
And
even
the
that. She does. I don't even. That's what's so funny is I thought that too, but really, what she gets upset about is again building off that theme about don't say I love you too much. She makes a bigger deal about, hey, you don't just go on a
go
vacation
on a
with
vacation.
someone. Like,
You
yeah,
don't go on a vacation with
like
somebody.
that's
That's right.
romantic. That's romantic stuff. Like, you don't just like
That's
throw
right.
that out. Like, like you're like slow down, dude. Like, it's not something like that's things that like
That's
people
totally
who love
right.
each other do.
But then one other thing I thought was she finishes her pizza and is like, okay, have a good night. And she just is gone. She just
Right.
went, I guess,
She
to
leaves.
bed.
Yeah, there's several times in this movie where she's like, "Hey, don't steal all my stuff," or like just
Just done.
yeah,
Like there's no reason for her. Like most people would then like, I don't know, wash some dishes. They would do something else,
yeah.
read a book, listen to her
He
gramophone.
actually says he'll take care of it, but that's
He
again
does.
so trusting that she's just like, this guy's only been alive for 48 hours,
And how late
or
are you
or
eating that
he's a
she's
homeless person
bed?
who's lost his mind, one or the other. Either way, not great that she's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I'm going to bed. I'll just
He
do.
could just be a person of grave danger that is just has a temperature imbalance. And but the other thing is that got me was she just finished eating. And she did this after she got home from what time is it? Is it 8:30? Is it 9?
Right.
And she's just like, I'm done. I'm done for the day. I
Yeah.
gotta go up to my cold hovel and just hang out there for a while.
Right.
And then he watches something on TV about home repair, and that's when you know where
Yeah.
this is going next. So the next day when she's at work, we see him start doing things like
Manly
fixing
things.
repairing the leak, repairing the hole in the step, but not repairing the heater, I guess because he had to buy a heater. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, this
and
is where
then
the AI kicks in the terms of the writing, where they're just like, what are manly things that are like, we're
of
just playing up
course,
how hot man this is. So it's like, what's hot? Oh, doing repairs around the house.
well, speaking of, we see him on the roof repairing the leak in the roof by putting new tiles down. And then a neighbor drives by and is all like, "Oh my God, look at that hunk of boy up there. Look at that man. I got to stop and see him." And then she accidentally backs onto the curb and he races down from the roof in a very impressive series of maneuvers and then helps push her car off. And then she invites him over to
Oh,
her place. Yeah.
slow down.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
We've
that's
got
right.
what is
I
arguably
forgot about
the
that.
raciest scene in the movie, and or like what is happening. Like if you're watching this movie with your parents, you might want to ask them to leave the room
This
because
is the part.
this is where it gets a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, so like when he's pushing her car off the curb, she's treating it as if they're having sex. Now, I did not even put that in my notes because I just was like, how am I going to describe this?
Yeah.
But I guess I just did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, which
he,
by the way, they're not touching. Like he's pushing
no,
her
he's
car,
pushing the car.
but he's behind her and she's like as if like this is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to her.
She's acting like she's getting genuine physical gratification from having her car pushed
Yeah. Yeah.
because I guess he is so hunky that is
Yes.
enough for her.
So much so that like when it ends, she's just like, I gotta tell the girls about this. Like she's
They'll
just
never believe the
yeah,
hunk that pushed my car.
yeah.
So
Oh,
she
girls can
asked
see
him
me
to come.
now.
What's great about this is there's some real stranger danger here where
Yeah,
she's like, "Can you come by my place and install a light?" And he
yeah,
said, "I'm not supposed to leave. Kathy told me." And she says, "But I'm friends with Kathy. You can come with me." And he believes her. Cut to him
yeah.
installing a light at her house,
Right. With a bunch of
which
her friends there, right? Like
a
is
bunch
that
of her friends just sitting around staring at him.
yeah, this is where I thought the conflict was really gonna kick in. Like I thought I was like,
Yes.
oh, this is it's cougars. Like it's the cougars that are like a threat to him and they're gonna like mess up his relationship with this girl or they're gonna take advantage of him in some like really bad way.
No,
And
they're
also,
just they're just really thirsty, but also honorable.
yeah,
They're
it's
happy
kind of
just to be
like
around him.
if you've ever seen Edward Scissorhands, it reminded me kind of straight from that, where like it's like all the housewives who are just like undersexed and they just like are just fetishizing this like stranger who's come to town, and then they're like, and Edward Scissorhands are all just like, oh, do my hair next, like do my hair, do my hair. He's like giving haircuts to all the ladies, and in
That's
this it's
right.
like
That's right.
they're all like, oh, I have something you can repair. Oh, I have a picture that frame that needs to be hung, and
But what else happens is this is the end of that whole subplot of him repairing things for people. It
no,
never
this
comes up again.
no, but it actually escalates and gets for
Well,
me.
that's true.
You
It
want to mention
gets
stranger danger.
that's true.
There's only one
So,
thing in this movie that I would argue is like borderline, like I cannot believe this left the script and made it to the film.
oh yeah, we'll
And
get
that is
there.
at this scene where this woman establishes the setup for that. When she
Oh,
suggests, "Hey,
well, does it get
hey, strange
teased here?
man."
Does
Well,
it
just
get teased in this
yeah.
scene?
She says,
Okay.
"Hey, stranger,
Person I've ever met before in my life.
my husband works at the school and we need someone to help out at the school."
She
Well,
only invites him because she's attracted to him.
right.
And what she does is
Um,
she invites him to start working at a school filled with children.
with children. Yep. And I mean, I'll just give the one
Well,
spoiler. This is a man with no fingerprints.
that's true. How did he get this job? Everybody just likes him so much. So after this, he asks for a ride, not to go back to the house for whatever reason, to go to the diner. So that all the women pile in a convertible, even though it's cold out, and they all drive to the diner to drop him off there. Kathy is not happy to see him there, though. She chastises him and says the police are looking for him. And of course, just then, the police show up. We get a very silly scene where Jack orders a glass of ice and then has an ice eat off
As
with the
someone
sheriff, Craig Robinson.
as someone who does genuinely enjoy chewing ice, I was glad to see representation in this movie.
Were you glad to see your passion
Yeah.
treated as like an extreme, like,
Face
type
off.
tense situation? Yeah.
Yeah. Because what's funny is in that scene is that Frost or Jack, he plays to like the cop is like, just like, what do you eat? What's the deal with that ice? Where's the beverage? And he's like, I just like to eat it. Like he just like he's given back what the cop is putting out. So
Yeah, that's what happens. And so then she yells at him for a bit about not following her rules. The next day, she tells him that she wants him to stay home and lay low. But then he says, I can't do that because I got a job as a maintenance man in a middle school.
Yep.
She tells him to cancel the job, but he says he can't. He promised, and he won't break a promise.
Mm.
They argue. And when they get home, she notices that Jack has repaired everything, and now she's touched. She's no longer mad at him. She's just touched. And then she apologizes to him for blowing up at him and says that he can be the school maintenance man, but he has to stay there. She'll drop him off, and he has to stay there until she picks him up like a child.
Right.
Which is really weird because
which by the way, he is.
He is, but that makes their romantic relationship to be even more unsettling.
Correct. I will say, and I can't take credit for this. After I watched this movie, I saw someone mention the parallels to this and Emma Stone's movie Poor Things.
Oh, okay.
If you don't know about that movie, watch the movie and then watch this, and you'd be like, yeah, I get it.
Well, there's also the movie Big.
Sure.
Where it has a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get a montage of him being a maintenance man at a school, except he's not being a maintenance man at all. All he's doing is decorating for like a winter social.
Right.
Is that what a maintenance man does? I would think that the people who throw the event would be the ones to decorate.
Yeah.
It's not like he's fixing leaky toilets or clogged drains.
Yeah. I mean, look, if I'm buying into the idea that somehow this guy got through whatever protocols it would take for a man
he started the next day.
I mean, I could see them saying like, hey, fill in with this, can you help with this, like blah blah. But again, we're jumping past that this guy who has no identity, no record, criminal or otherwise, is allowed to work around children unsupervised, by the way.
No, there's no other people around.
Yeah.
It's not even that the woman who hired him or her husband is somehow monitoring him.
And they very specifically make sure that you know that he has spent large amounts of time with these children without anybody else around, because there's a reveal later that only works if no one knows it. No one knows that it happened.
Well, sure. And also they show him throughout his experiences that he is best friends with some of these kids. Yeah, they love him.
Special handshakes.
Special handshakes, which is also a thing. Let's see here. Then we get scenes of Jack and Kathy decorating her house. We end on Kathy picking up Jack one day from school, and she accidentally mentions how good looking he is to everybody in town. And then she's like, and then everybody loves him. And he says, but you're a part of town. Does that mean that you love me? And then she gets all awkward about that. And she cuts him off saying that it's not something that she thinks she can experience at this point in her life, the feeling of love, because she's still mourning her deceased husband. She says specifically that she's still not over him,
which is fair. Like that's I get a little like a bugbear with some of these movies. I mean, some are worse than others, right? Where it's like where the grieving widower is expected to like just get over their stuff like so quickly. But in this movie, we're not really sure how long. Like you said, we're not so sure how long it's been. So I'll give it a pass.
Well, Jack, a snowman who was brought to life by her and who is in love with her, says to her, "Don't you think your husband?" He thinks that her husband wouldn't want her to think that she couldn't love.
Right.
Which, how would he even have any concept of the complicated human emotions, let alone what someone who has passed on might want?
Right. He's watched a lot of movies. So
that's true. I can't discount what he's learned from movies. Anyway, as I often write in my notes, they share a moment. I don't know how else to describe those times in movies when these people just kind of look at each other in quiet times.
It's what we come here for.
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, but I think it is I think it's important. Like this, yeah. Like the point of this seems to be that everybody does love him, and that like he's immediately sort of absorbed into the town, and everybody's just like, we love this guy.
He can do no wrong to them because he tries so hard to do right.
Right.
They pass by Mel and Theo's, and he sees that, as he put it, the glass he ordered has arrived. How would he recognize this? How would he know that's the glass he ordered? It doesn't matter. He sees the glass he ordered has arrived at Mel and Theo's, and then he literally hops out of the car in order to fix the window. And he also has to explain, this is the little thing that they bring up, that he used her account to order this and many other things. And she has to explain that those accounts are tied to her credit card, which means she has paid for them. It's not very important to the movie, but if they felt the need to explain how he acquired these things.
Yeah, someone should keep a running tally of how much money he is responsible for in
Well,
this.
we have no idea what he spent to fix the home repairs.
Yeah.
And also, by the end of the movie, she fixes her heating. It looks like she gets a brand new heater.
Mhm.
Money cannot be an issue for her. Also, spoiler, he buys her a very fancy necklace, and it costs, I think, $1,200 or something like that. I think they say a number in the movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You can return it if you want," and she says, "No, I'll keep it," because money is no issue to her apparently.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll just say,
which
let's put a pin in that moment because
sure.
we'll talk about it towards the end, but
Let's
pin
see
in that
here.
moment.
So yes, so he goes in there and he admits to Mel and Theo that he was the streaker and that he broke their window and he stole some clothes. But they are kind to him. They do not fault him. As Mel says, you can't be mad at Christmas, and I made a note of that because that made me very mad. And it is Christmas, so I by default I am proving it wrong. You can't be mad at Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he did something horrible to you, like he broke your window. That's expensive. It's cold out. There's ice just living in the streets, and you don't have a window. You don't have a front window. Let's see here. We cut to Kathy waiting in her car while Jack fixes the window. The deputy walks up and says that they have a sketch of the suspect, and yes, it looks like her friend Jack. She distracts the deputy by offering him some soup from the diner. We get a whole scene with the sheriff and deputy talking to Mel and Theo about how they're going to catch the culprit. As I put in my notes, it is very wacky.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Fast forward.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, well, you'd like to, but then Jack shows up at the police department. So you can't fast forward now. Our main character's here, or our secondary main character.
Yeah, that part's cute.
He shows up at the
Basically
police.
volunteers to they don't have a photo of him to cross-reference,
Yes.
so he's like, "Oh, I'll let you take my photo."
Well, there's two things. He shows up there for a very specific reason, but while he's there, he notices photos on the wall and says, "You don't have my photo. Would you like my photo?" And the sheriff is more than happy to take his photo because he suspects him of being the criminal. But then once that's sorted out, I think it's then that he says he wants to talk to the deputy because he wants advice about how to ask Kathy out.
Right.
And he specifically wants to talk to the deputy for some reason, even though we haven't seen them share a lot of screen time.
No.
He says he wants to talk to the deputy, and he asks him about asking Kathy out on a date. And all his advice is basically if you're both having a good time, that's okay, or then everything's fine. That's not how you ask somebody out on a date. Then he asks about kissing. And lastly, the third thing he thinks of is to ask him to teach him how to dance.
Right.
The deputy offers advice on all three of these things. As I put in my notes, it's very wacky.
Deputy's a good guy. That was my
He was, I think, a much better balance of complete comedy and heartfelt feelings than the sheriff was. So I almost bought into him a little bit more. We get a scene of Jack at the school overhearing a kid ask another kid to the dance. This gives him an idea.
Can I ask a question? Do you know? I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but this is post this in the comments if you know.
Yeah, we're sure.
This seems to be a trope, right? Where someone's supposed to chaperone the dance. And then he asks someone to go to the dance with him. Isn't this if you're chaperoning, isn't that work? Aren't you supposed to be keeping an eye on things? Aren't you supposed to be
you're on the clock.
Aren't you on the clock? So why would you invite isn't that a huge distraction if you're trying to get romantic with your significant other when you're supposed to be protecting the children or something? I don't know.
The only way I would say it to be allowable is if you are both going to the dance to be a chaperone. Hey, do you want to go to the dance with me, and then we'll both chaperone? That sort of takes away some of the romantic elements of it out of it. But at least you're both going there with the purpose of what an adult should be when going to
but he's treating it 100% like a date. It's 100% a romantic moment. He's all about trying to get some sensual time with his lady. And
for sure.
Seems why it's bad that they hired this guy.
It's one thing for him to ask. So the idea is that when he hears these kids, one asks the other to the dance, he gets an idea. Right. That's when he goes home and he asks Kathy to the school dance with him as a date. Mm-hmm. It's one thing for him to ask. She says yes.
Yeah, she should have said no. You're right.
She knows so much more than him, and why
Yeah,
would
she
she
could have
anyway?
said, "Hey,
That's not for
I'm not
us.
gonna go to a school dance because I'm not a child. But if you
And the
want to go
only reason
dancing,
you're going is because you're on duty.
right?" She could invite him to be like, "But we could go to the club."
Anything else. We could go to the club. We could go to the movies to watch A Scottish Christmas. They could
Yeah.
do anything. But instead, she says yes. Then she says that Jack is going to need something special to wear to the dance. Then we get a time for a shopping trip montage.
Gotta have a
Though it's him trying on clothes. I thought for sure that he was going to wear a top hat by the end of this to go along with the snowman motif.
missed opportunity.
And they didn't.
100% should have done that.
It's
Should
now
have
the
had the
night of the.
original Frosty hat. Would have been great.
Yeah. I really did think that's where they were going with this. And then he just wears a tuxedo. It's suddenly the night of the dance. The movie, it's like the movie gets tired of telling a story. So they're just like, it's time for the dance.
Yeah.
Kathy comes out in her dress, and Jack is all like, wow, you look so pretty. He also has a gift for Kathy. It's a snowflake necklace. This is the one that costs a lot of money, and he says she can return it if she wants, since she paid for it in the first place. At the dance, he catches up with his friends who are kids. Then he asks Kathy to dance. They dance and they talk. Then this slow dance turns into an up-tempo dance, and then Jack gets all the kids on the floor, and they all do a big choreographed dance together.
Yeah. Do they
Which,
though? Do they? Watch that film.
well,
Watch that film again. They are so like that's the most low budget part of the whole movie for me was that
it's the dance.
they clearly like in the plot we want to believe that he learns this coordinated dance with the students, but at no point do we ever see all of the students and him in the same shot together. It's always cutting back and forth between here's some kids dancing and here's him kind of like off to the
I
side.
didn't notice that because
Yeah,
I was
he's
taking notes, I
kind of
think.
like I couldn't tell because it's like I'm so paying attention to these. Like I couldn't tell. It's like, is it supposed to be that he did learn the moves or he's bad at it? Because they
Well,
kind of do it both ways. Like
my
it's
impression was that it was his idea.
no, it was his idea. But I'm
Hey,
saying like
kids, let's do it.
right. I understand that in the story that was the intention, but when you actually watch the clips, he's not actually dancing in sync with them. So I
No,
wasn't sure if that's intentional, that it's like, oh look, he's trying to dance, but he can't, and he's not good at it. And these kids are good dancers, but he's not a good dancer. But the
that's
movie
so
doesn't
funny. I
but the
didn't even
movie doesn't
notice.
commit to it one way or the other. They just kind of show you some scenes of the kids dancing, him dancing, and they say, leave it up to your imagination. We're not here to tell you what's going on.
Well, he gets so worked up doing his dance that he's starting to apparently sweat through his suit, but we don't actually see that. He
Right.
just looks normal to us. Like
Yeah.
sometimes sheen, sometimes he doesn't have a sheen, but
I
she
didn't
is
even
suddenly.
notice. I actually didn't even notice that. I didn't even make that connection.
Well, that's I only got this from context clues because Kathy,
Right.
just watching him from afar in his choreographed or not so choreographed dance, gets really worried about him and forces him to go outside to
Right. I
cool
thought it
down.
was because there's a scene where she sees they established this ice sculpture 5 minutes earlier, and within the 5 minutes since we
Oh,
last
that's
saw it,
right.
it's like half melted already.
Well, when he goes
Which,
outside,
by the
he's
way,
all,
doesn't happen. Like if you get an ice sculpture, like that thing's gonna
you're
last.
fine.
You're set for the day. Don't worry about your ice sculptures melting during the wedding.
They go outside, they share a moment, they start to kiss at the children's dance, but it is outside. And then Jack pulls back. She asks what has happened. He says this has been the best night of his life. Granted, there's not a lot to choose from,
Fair.
but he's not sure how much time he has left. He can't help but feel selfish because I guess he's already internalizing mortality. And that if I let her fall in love with me, or at least kiss me, which will fall, I guess, lead to falling in love with me, and then I go away, I'm
Right.
just hurting her like her husband all over again.
Which to me here is like the missed opportunity, right? Like this is where like, oh, these could have been the stakes the whole time. Like if we could have established that there is this threat that he could melt or that he's not going to last, much like Frosty the Snowman, that's the drama of Frosty the Snowman. He's like, I'm not going to make it past winter. That there's a story there. Like that's something that like could have been a little bit more like because they seem to want to play this like, oh, you got to live in the moment thing. And you've got this dead guy who died of cancer, it seems like there should be connecting of the dots here to say,
No,
like, live in the moment. Life is short. Like she should be like, dude, this is so crazy, but you know what? Screw it. Like, because life is short, I'm gonna go for it. But they're not even playing that really. It's just kind of
no,
like,
they're not. You're right because that's what his behavior implies that that's the lesson they want you to learn. But then his own behavior here, where he pulls back on that, and
yeah,
now he's worried about hurting her. So
right.
instead of a kiss, and of course they won't kiss again, they're never going to kiss again.
Mm.
She gives him a big hug, and then we cut to the sheriff talking to himself in a very wacky way, where Jack was first seen outside of the diner. And this is only important because he notices the ATM machine that you mentioned earlier and
Mhm.
sees it has the camera, and he thinks that this will be the key in catching the culprit. Cut to a Christmas party at Kathy's diner, which may or may not be happening the same night as the school dance. We have no concept of time in this
Yeah.
scene. It's just happening. It's just occurring.
It's true.
It was just because, like, in my head, I'm like, okay, so the dance is continuing, but it's not. That's not what's happening. It's a completely different event.
Right.
Jack is there helping her make eggnog, of course. Kathy gives a speech about how nice it is to have everyone there. But then the sheriff bursts in, and after a very, very, very long speech, he arrests Jack. Kathy tries to get him to stop, but the sheriff takes him away. Mel from Mel and Theos shouts, "He's different from us."
Yeah.
And I thought that that was a funny line. Like, and then one of the recurring background characters says, like, basically, different how? What do you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And then the doctor who checked him at the beginning of the movie says that he's a snowman who came to life. Everyone just believes it's true. And one person, as if it's an explanation, just says, "It's Christmas."
Yeah.
Of course.
I want to
We've
live in this
all
town.
seen
I
we've
want to live
all
in
seen
this town.
such things.
Yeah.
You know, it's a Christmas time. You know, you've seen other things happen like this at Christmas, granted, maybe not a snowman. Anyway, everybody cheers then. Once they agree, I guess, that it's Christmas and things can happen. We cut to the sheriff giving Jack a hard time at the police station. This is when he tries to take his fingerprints, but realizes he doesn't have any fingerprints. Jack is sweating a lot at this point. Kathy shows up to try to bail him out, but the sheriff says the bail has been set at $2,000. The sheriff also says that he's going to be locking up and going home and won't be back until the 26th, which is 2 days from then. And then you have to wonder who's taking care of the prisoner
Correct.
while he's away like that. Where is he going to get food? How would he be cared for?
Right.
But we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to plow forward, just like this movie does. And this is also when we find out
This
it's
is, I
Christmas
was gonna
Eve.
say, this is where, like, if your patience is running thin with him, like, this is the breaking point, because now it's like it's getting into ridiculous territory where it's like it's bad enough that it's like, oh, he's breaking the glass thing out of proportion. Oh, minor offense, the streaking, the naked streaking. But here now he's like, oh, he's a sleeper agent, and he's like, he
Yeah,
knows
he's
how
a
to
spy who
regulate
burned
his
off his
temper.
fingerprints.
Yeah, it's like, okay, God, it's like enough.
I thought it was all terrible. I mean, just all terrible, and it was surprisingly aggravating. But
Yeah. The
then
only
this is
good
also
thing, the only thing I'll say I liked from a filmmaking standpoint is that it's a nice little art direction touch that the prison cell, because the lighting is all green, and then there's like little red lights or decorating
oh
the
yeah,
prison cell, so it has a Christmassy vibe. So it's
I
like,
did notice that it was starkly green.
yeah, it's cute.
But this is when we find out it's Christmas Eve. We have no concept of time in this movie. It's taking place around Christmas, and suddenly it's Christmas Eve, which I thought was just like a way to pull something out of thin air so they could give it some more stakes. Oh,
Right.
by the way, it's Christmas Eve too. Don't you know that?
That's the night of the school
Anyway,
dance. This school dance is on Christmas Eve.
was it? Or was that the night before and we just didn't bother showing any more story? Or did they go to two dances in one night?
Mm.
So Jack starts melting in his holding cell. Kathy hurries to the diner to see how much money she has, but it's not enough. She heads to the station anyway with whatever amount she does have. When she gets there, we see that the whole town has followed her, presumably from the diner where the whole town was, and everyone chips in to help her have enough money for bail. There are lots of speeches, and eventually the sheriff gives. I'm skipping over so much here, but eventually the sheriff gives in and lets him out.
Yeah, so they try to do a George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life kind of moment where basically the whole town comes together to raise the funds to pay off the bail, and that's like a wow, everybody really loves him. And this was another big like, what are you doing here? Like, what is the point of this movie? Because like it's like, okay, cute that, like, oh, he had a positive impact, everybody loves him or whatever. But how much more powerful would it have been if they did it for her? If it was like,
That
like,
she does things for people.
right. And that they, like, maybe they don't even really believe he's a snowman. Like, they think he's a cute guy. They think he's really nice. But they could even have, like, look, we don't even really think this guy's a snowman. Look, we're going to be honest. But you believe he's a snowman.
Yeah, we care about you.
And we care
You're a
about
member of
you.
our community.
And you're a member of our community. And we know that you've been going through hell, and we know how hard this year has been for you. And look, if you need some magical snowman guy to come into your life to make your life worth living, then we're all for that, and we're going to help you, and we're going to buy into that fantasy. And then it would have made like how important you are to this community. Like I would have actually teared up by that.
Yes, that's true.
But the fact that it's all for this like snowman guy is just kind of like, I don't know, it just didn't have any meaning behind it.
No, because you don't really buy into the fact that this guy matters that much to them. Like you've seen him touch some people's worlds, but it's
especially because they're a good people, they're a good town. Like we're seeing that they're good people. Right after that, people are giving her scarves. She works with great people. There's little children. It's not like this is like a cold, hardened town.
And like, he's changing over.
Right. He brought magic back into our lives. And, we were all dead inside until this snowman showed up and showed us, what life is about. There's none of that. It was like this. Things were good. Things are still good. This guy's nice. He did some repairs. He worked at the school.
But regardless of all that inconsistency and opportunity that they let fall, eventually the sheriff gives in. He gives in and he unlocks them. He gives them the money back. And then they drag him outside. Now the sheriff is completely serious character, just like everybody else.
Right.
He's helping Kathy carry him out. There are no paramedics being called by people who don't believe that he's a snowman. And they lay him in the snow. And he is, by all accounts, dead.
Yeah.
He's just laying there shirtless in the snow with his scarf around his neck, and he's dead. And Kathy tries to bring him to life, and he doesn't awaken.
Right. The doctor's like, we got to call it. Like,
Yeah. He has a physiology that I have never studied before in my life. But
right. But I can tell.
He's gone.
This guy's gone.
You've got to let him go, Kathy.
Yeah. And then my favorite part of the movie, everybody gets up and walks away.
They're just done. They're done.
They're like, yeah, he's dead. We'll just leave him here.
Well, the other thing I thought was funny is that Kathy then takes the scarf from around his neck, which in one scene earlier in the movie, it's implied that the scarf is what keeps him alive.
Correct, which I want to get back to, but go ahead.
And they never touch on it again. There's never a scene where it accidentally falls off and he freezes up. There's never a scene like that, which feels like another missed opportunity for them to give some sort of stakes to the scarf. But instead, he has it on throughout the movie. No one ever says anything. It never comes up. And then at the end, she takes it off of his dead body. I'm like, well, he has no chance of coming back to life then.
Right, that's what
And then she kisses his dead body, which is kind of weird because it's their first kiss. And she immediately gives him a kiss. That's when Coldplay starts playing in the background, which is neither really funny or not, but it was just a weird cue.
But it shows the budget.
Yeah, it does. Exactly.
That Netflix money.
And then oh no, wait, that's after he comes back to life. Spoiler, he comes back to life. So she kisses him, and then everybody just leaves his dead body in the snow. Like, what? They just leave his carcass laying there. They turn back on him. They leave. But then he stands up and calls out for Kathy. Kathy races back over. Everybody comes back over. And she gives him a big hug. And then he says, I feel kind of funny. And they determine through the scientific method of what do you feel? And he goes, it's like my skin is numb, but it also kind of hurts. That he can now feel cold. And everyone thinks, or at least Kathy thinks, that must mean he is real now. And that's when she gives him a kiss. I like the idea that she waited for to give a conscious kiss to him until he was human, as if she was holding out for that before she was going to give him anything.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why that would have happened. Like, why didn't they kiss when he was still a snowman? She waited until he had died and come back to life, and now he's human. Why is he human, by the way? Is it because of her kiss, her mournful kiss?
Yeah, I feel like they're trying to go for something like she finally believed in him, but I feel like she kind of believed in him a little earlier than that. Like
she's the first one that believed he was a snowman.
That could have been the moment where, like, if the whole movie she was like, I don't really believe he's a snowman. I just don't really believe, like, it's cute that you people all believe that, but I don't believe he's a snowman. I think he's this. It could have been like, that could have been the moment where it was like, I don't care if you are a snowman. I still love you, and then it would have been like, you believe in me, or something. Again, we've watched too many movies.
Well, no, but it would have been something. It would have given some sort of logic to what's happening here. But instead, she kisses him. That's when Coldplay plays. And then we cut to Christmas Day, where they're exchanging presents. Jack gives her a book about home repair. We cut to her immediately. I don't know if it's Christmas Day, immediately fixing her heating.
Right.
Why didn't he do that when he had his opportunity to do it? I don't know, but he didn't. But she has now fixed her heating, and she takes the the post-it note about calling the repairman off the wall. And her gift to him is tickets to Hawaii. Money is of no object to Kathy. She's buying anything she wants. And the movie ends with him being happy and they kiss again. The end. Thus ends Hot Frosty.
I also felt like she was taking a big risk. Like it's like, yeah, we know he's real now, but like, do we really want to push it? Like that's kind of a, like maybe go to Alaska first and then Hawaii.
I mean, she's turning the heat on. She doesn't give a shit anymore. He can toast all he wants. But yeah, so that's the end of the movie. I was disappointed that given the frantic nature that people talked about it, that it wasn't worse or more outlandish. But then I thought that maybe I've been warped by my own journey through Christmas movies.
Correct.
That maybe this movie is very arch and very ridiculous, and I'm just numb to it now because of everything I've seen.
Yes, I think that is true. I think that would be the case because I'm not as bad as you. I probably watch, what do you watch, 60 a year?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, I probably watch about 20.
Okay.
So I'm
So
like,
you're
I'm trailing a little bit behind you.
well, that's all right.
But
No one should be like me.
But still, more than any good sane person should do. And I had a very similar reaction where I was like, okay, like it's like this part is, but it's like, again, I thought a very nutty Christmas with the Nutcracker, like that to me was more like over the top and ridiculous than this. But even that, by this point, you might watch that and be like, yeah, but because you've seen 10 other, crazy movies or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the like, so much of Christmas movies for me is this battle of like cynicism and purity, like, within me. So it's like I just don't know how to feel about it because it's so calculated and it feels so contrived, but it doesn't feel
genuine, that's for sure.
It doesn't feel genuine.
It doesn't feel like this movie was written from some place in somebody's heart where they had a story to tell.
Right. But it's also not funny enough to like be parody either. Like it's not like hilarious.
No, gosh no. It's by far it's not hilarious. It tries at times, but also it doesn't try that hard. Like it feels like comedy's just in the background and it shows up every once in a while, and the rest of the time it's really earnest. I feel basically like anything with Kathy is super earnest.
Which, I mean, in a way, she's just playing her type, right? Like she's playing a variation on what we go to see these movies for. Like oh,
for sure.
Like she's playing herself, basically, I would assume. I don't know if she's actually that nice in real life, but if you've watched like 50 of these movies with her, and she's always very approachable, very likable, very, the kind of person you'd want to, you'd have a hard time not having a crush on her.
I did. I've watched at least one other movie with her, and I want to say it was like the lantern that saved Christmas or the tree that saved Christmas, and it was fine. It was totally fine. It was nothing wrong with that movie. But that was an entirely earnest.
That you've watched, like, what have you been doing this for 3 years?
This will be my 4th year, and that means I will have
60 times
within a matter of days. Yes.
And you've only seen one Lacey Chabert movie.
It's possible. Well, that's the other thing is I tried.
Like you're really like swimming like around the obstacles.
I honestly
like
tried
one in every 10 movies she's in.
Well, it's possible that there's more than one that I just can't recall.
Right.
But I also try to avoid a lot of mainstream fare just for things that are more interesting. And she is too mainstream for me, I guess, in many instances.
Yeah, I think she's the queen. I think she's, and I didn't even realize it until very recently. Like I always thought that there were other people that were a little more like known as being a lot.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the Nutty Christmas, Melissa Joan Hart. She has been in like 5 of these. I've watched 2. I watched one that was because it was supposed to be so ridiculous. Might have been last season, the last time I did this. Holiday in Handcuffs.
Yeah, I feel like that was one of the first like quirky ones that was like, I feel like that when that movie came out, I remember that was like the sea shift of like, oh, they're becoming a little self-aware now that they know that we've kind of done the same plot line a million times and now we have to kind of like be a little funnier with it.
And then I watched one this year about a toy store. It's her and Mario Lopez again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about another. They were competing toy store owners. Then they end up teaming up, and wouldn't you know it, they end up falling in love.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know. Spoiler, they end up falling in love. Um,
So don't you think this movie should have pushed it a little further? Like if they really want to go for that like wacky Instagram, we want people on the internet to be talking about this. I feel like they should have pushed it a little further.
I think they got to do a couple things. They labeled it Hot Frosty. They got to go lean more into people thinking he's super handsome, and that becomes a larger part of the plot.
Yeah.
They got to lean more into the magic of it and deciding what the rules are of this. Like I said, like the scarf comes off at one point and he refreezes.
So
They
that's
they
I love that. I love that because that was my thought too. I have a note here that I was like, I can't believe they missed the opportunity. I mean, these movies are so sexless, right? Generally, these
of
Netflix,
course.
especially the Hallmark ones, are so sexless. But this is Netflix. Netflix can get a little saucier, and from time to time they do. And I feel like this was them trying to get a little saucier, but again, not enough because I would have written the scene or I would have pitched the scene where they're gonna have sex, and
Oh,
she's taking his clothes off, and then she takes the scarf off, and then he freezes, and then it's like, oh shit.
well, one of the challenges with that is they had him realize that the scarf was somehow the key to his existence, and so they never had to prove it.
Right.
If it was unknown that the scarf was important, then it could have been stumbled upon by either him or another character. But they didn't. They set that rule. We're just going to set that aside. He knows the scarf is important. Um, why? I don't know. But yeah, they also didn't focus so much on the crime that he commits at the beginning, and that ties up seriously like 20 some minutes of this movie.
Agreed.
They could have done anything else at that time. They could have explored their relationship more. They could have had him not be around kids as much. They could have done so much with this time. They could have had more women, fawning over him to emphasize how hot Frosty is, and we only get one scene like that. And then he's a very chaste snowman who is just a good guy.
Right.
And like you said, who carved him? Why did that
Yeah.
not come back into play?
Yeah, well, especially at the end when the whole town, like, because the whole town
The
comes
whole
together
town's
at the
there.
end, and at no point does someone say like it would have been. I actually was expecting like there were going to be someone who's like some old man or something like comes out and he's like, when I carved him, like I.
Yeah. What if the carver was in fact somehow magical? But also at least have a background joke where somebody says, "Where'd my sculpture go?" Just something. Just something to pay heed to his origins there. But
Yeah, well, especially
no.
because he's so specific. Like that's not even like general. Like, hey, I tried to make like a Greek god statue as
No.
a snowman. He looks like he was modeled after someone. Like he looks
Yes, he
like
was a person.
yeah, like they were like, this is clearly a real dude. So it's just that adds an extra weirdness that I don't think the movie knows about. Like, I don't think they're
No, I don't. I
the
think they
one thing,
just
they're so self-aware, but not where it matters.
nope, not at all. I also like that she owns a diner, but it doesn't really come into play. Like it's never. It's
Yeah,
just a thing. It's just a thing that
that's
exists.
just a trope, right? Like that's just
Oh yeah, diners and in general owning the diners or going to diners is just a hallmark of these movies.
but you're right that
Uh,
like it did prime us to think that like the diner was going to be in trouble or they're going to have to shut down the diner.
something.
Yeah.
Well, there has to. You think there's going to be a reason for her home to be in such disrepair, but I guess it's just that her husband was supposed to be a handyman, and she's avoiding dealing with these things, which is kind of
I kind of wish they would at least have said that, like, that she doesn't even want to call a handyman, but
right.
just the idea of like this man coming into her house and it, like
Somebody else repairing these things.
yeah, it would remind her or would feel like this, somehow like she's cheating on her husband or something.
It would have been ridiculous, but at least it would have connected a couple of dots that are just out there lingering.
Yeah. Again,
So, do you have any movie recommendations? I guess the Nutty Christmas is the one that you're.
yeah, I feel like, like that's the one that does it right. The like of this kind of movie. The movies that I've been kind of getting into on the more mainstream side are the ones that are travel log ones that are or basically just propaganda pieces, I guess you could say, because they're uh like oh, come to Vienna, although the Vienna one is horrible. Don't watch the Vienna one. But they're like be like a country, but then like clearly like the board of tourism like somehow kind of help sponsor it, because they hit all the like very specific places and they're like, oh, look at us eating the local treats. And
Yes, this is what we're known for.
yeah, like, oh, it's Kinder eggs, that's our local thing, Um, and the one that I think does a really good job of converging that, and another overlapping interest for me is the Biltmore Christmas, which is the Biltmore is a mansion in it's down south. I think it's in like South Carolina, not too far
Okay.
from like Asheville, North Carolina. It's in outside of North Carolina. And I've actually been there. It's a beautiful, manor house that like they do tours and they do events and stuff there. So they filmed a movie there and it's like basically just a big ad for the Biltmore estate. But it's also got a time travel component. Like it's like this setup that they're filming a movie at the Biltmore, and it's a classic movie, and they're like, we're using classic actors or whatever, and it's like basically if you like Turner Classic Movies, it's like perfect for you because it's like making all these like references to like old classic movies and stuff. And then there's a time travel component to the movie. And then on top of that, it stars Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation in a very like wink wink nod nod like
I
a very
have not watched this movie. As soon as you said William Riker was in it, I would remember.
yeah, and he's
I've
great.
seen it.
He's great. Um and it just has like nice costume. Like it's the one that's like it's bad, but it's good. Like you said,
I know
they're
what you mean.
actually
You get like a genuine joy from it.
yeah, because I was like, they cared. They were trying to actually make something good, even though like so clearly its origins are in like, let's just try to make money for this place. Like this movie existed that they could have the DVD at the gift shop at the Biltmore estate. Like that's 100% why this movie exists. But they had fun with it, and somebody was like, you know what? I actually care about this. I want to write about this, and I want to. And it's got a lot of little nods to like if you're into movie classic cinema and stuff. You're like, oh yeah, that's kind of like that thing. So I was like, I'm really enjoying this one.
It's rare that I find a movie that I just enjoy watching. And I think part of that is I force myself to take notes. So even the most enjoyable movie
Sure.
becomes a dirge.
Yeah.
But something you said about like travel logs, there was one I watched called Saving Christmas Spirit. And this is the one that took place in Scotland. And
Oh, is it
and
wine or I mean, spirits? Is
uh,
it like whiskey
it's
or
like
something?
it's whiskey, yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole point is the woman goes there for like a I think it's a paleontological dig. She has a paleontology degree, and she's going there to look up something that was found. And then the movie keeps setting up that she's going to go on these trips to learn more about what was found. And it's like tomorrow I'm going to head to this waterfall because there's something nearby I want to see. And then they cut to her saying, "Man, that waterfall was something else. Now it's time for the romance plot of this movie." And they do this like 3 or 4 times in the movie, and I just remember getting so mad. Not
Really?
because I really wanted to see her do these things, but it would have been different to see her doing something. And instead, they set all these things up and they just show up afterwards. And
Yeah.
that happens a lot in these movies where somebody has a profession, and it's like they'll put the profession in the title, like a baker or whatever. And then did you find out that's not really, it's just like a movie that says they're about Christmas, but it's not about Christmas. It's just something to have it in the title or have it in the
Right.
script.
Well, that's what's funny is like there's so many of these, and it can be hard to know until you're watching it, like which are the ones that are taking it seriously or not. And to your point, like I just said, like I like the travel ones. There are some that are very, like I said, probably paid for in part by like local tourism boards that really make an effort to show you the culture. But then there are ones exactly what you're saying, where it's called like a London Christmas, and they literally get on a plane, they'll show you like a quick montage of like all the greatest like London sites that was like B footage, B-roll footage, stock footage, or they just paid someone to real quickly like, oh, just film, Buckingham Palace and Trafalgar Square or whatever, the classic London things. And then all of the story parts take place like in a hotel or in a ballroom that could have been filmed anywhere and probably was filmed anywhere. So it's just like it literally could have been any town in the world, but they're calling it, a London Christmas because they've got that like 5 minute montage of footage.
They
And
have
that
the
drives
footage
me,
in there.
yeah, and that drives me crazy because it's like, yeah, it's like, come on, you were
You're
not,
not really this thing that you're purporting to be.
no, exactly.
Uh,
But on the flip, you're right but then there are some that like I watched one that I can't remember the title of, but it was like about these dancers, and it was about like these two dancers that are gonna like fall in love during Christmas, and it was like very clearly that they hired professional dancers, and there's lots of scenes of them dancing, and I was like, okay, like at least this is they're selling you on, they're being honest about what it is.
looking through the different movies, I have a folder with all of the podcasts in it. So all the folders are titled the different movies that I've watched. And I was thinking there were some that I genuinely enjoyed. And just to put it out there for you or for anybody else that's curious, one was called A New Christmas. This is a very different type of movie. It's not a romantic, I mean, it's not really a romantic Christmas movie. It's very low key, basically like an indie movie that just happens to be taking place during Christmas. But I found myself enjoying that mostly, maybe because it was such a different flavor of movie. And the other one that was a straight up holiday romance movie that I found was really buoyed by the strong acting performances in it was The Holiday Exchange, which was one of the hardest movies I had to take notes about because there were just so many characters and so many small plots. But in effect, the movie itself was enjoyable. It's basically these two guys decide to stay in each other's homes for Christmas because they're looking for a change of pace and they find some kind of home swap website. So I'll live here and you'll live here. And then they end up falling in love with other guys that happen to be in those two areas. But the acting was really well done. And there wasn't a lot of stuff that happened that made me roll my eyes. Like, why is this even happening in this movie? It was just very straightforward. And when I look back upon at this point, 50 some odd movies that I've watched, 56 movies, that's one that stands out as more enjoyable than most.
Yeah, if you're not rolling your eyes too frequently, that's pretty good.
It is something, especially in this line of work. Goodness gracious. Before you go, did you want to plug anything? Is there anything you want to mention?
Not really.
That's
I'm
fine.
Yay Time on most social media. If you go to my YouTube, sometimes I post Christmas. I do like fan videos where I like edit Christmas videos, Christmas footage from various cartoons and stuff to like music videos and stuff just for fun. That's like just silly projects that I do. That's the most Christmassy thing I can connect to.
Well, that's nice. Well, thank you so much for appearing on the show. You're
Yeah.
only the second guest outside of my life partner, Rusty, who is always around, and so you're the first person that's not a Rusty to
Yeah.
appear
And
on the
we can be
podcast.
honest, I begged my way in. I was like, I got to be on this.
Well, yeah, but and also you helped me figure out how to make it work. So, that worked out for both of us.
Yeah, man. Well, happy
Well,
holidays, and you're doing the Lord's work.
I'm doing something all right. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.